All right, this is the visual reflection for what is this, week 6? Yeah, week 6. Okay, so just to start, I'm gonna do like kind of just the quotes from the reading. So in Black Feminism, Kahambi Collective River Statement, 1977. Black women. This is the quote. Black women's extremely negative relationship to the American political system, a system of white male, a system of white male rule, has always been determined by our membership in two oppressed racial and sexual castes. As Angela Davis points out in Reflections of a Black Woman's Role in the Community of Slaves, black women have always embodied, if only their physical manifestation, an adversary stance to white male rule and have actively resisted and inroads upon them and their communities in both dramatic and subtle ways. So it's basically saying that, like, as a black woman, it was like that was like the hardest thing to be growing up in this time period, just because not only were you treated bad because you were black, you were also treated bad because you were a woman. So it's kind of like two bad happenings at the same time, and they were basically just seen as inferior, especially to white men and the white male, and they were kind of under that white male system in regards to that they weren't really equal and they were black. The next quote is "Women in Prison: How We Are by Asada Shakur." The women of my grandmother's generation hometown trained their daughters for womanhood. They taught them to give respect and demand respect. They taught their daughters how to churn butter, how to use elbow grease. They taught their daughters to respect the strength of their bodies, to lift the boulders, and how to kill a hog. What to do for a colic, how to break a fever, how to make poultice, patchwork quilts, plait hair, and how to hum and sing. They taught their daughters to take care, take heart, charge, and to take responsibility. They would not tolerate a lazy heifer or a gal with a head in the clouds. Their daughters had to learn how to get their lessons, how to survive, how to be strong. The women of my grandmother's generation were the glue that held the family and community together. I picked this one in Women in Prison just because it shows and symbolizes like that kind of black woman strength ideal. That's kind of, they had to basically, the term for it now is get out the mud and kind of just figure out everything on their own, and they kind of helped each other. And it kind of shows that black women were really like the glue to hold everything together, even though it may not have, even though it went unnoticed back then. Like, as we analyze it now, it's, they had to be super strong to be a woman and be black at that particular time, especially in this particular time in history. So I just thought this quote was really important to show that they mean a lot to their communities and families. Lastly, I'm Your Sister by Audre Lorde. In America, this norm is usually defined as white, thin, male, young, heterosexual, Christian, and financially secure. It is with this mystical norm that the trappings of power reside within society. Those of us who stand outside that power often identify one way in which we are different, and we assume that to be the primary cause of all oppression, forgetting the other distortions around difference, some of which we ourselves are practicing. By and in large, within the women's movement today, white women focus upon their oppression as women and ignore the differences of race, sexual preference, class, age. There is a pretense and homogeneity of experience covered by the word sisterhood that does not, in fact, exist. So this quote, I think, was the most important out of all these, just because, especially back then, it was like really known as white America, and the racism that was going on. If you weren't a male and white and a Christian, that you were basically like an outcast, and you also had to be financially secure. So you could be all those things. You had to be basically all those things: white, male, young, heterosexual, attractive, and obviously financially secure. And if you fell out of that like social norm that was made in America, then you were basically an outcast. So, and a lot of the outcasts were African American, because obviously if they were white at the time, you can get away with not having some of them things. But being an African American and then being a woman, you obviously fall out of that norm, and then you kind of get blamed for falling out of that norm. So anything that went wrong during this time period, the whites would obviously blame it on the African Americans, African American women. And then women back then, this was during the women's rights movements and stuff like that. So the white women would move towards and focus all their energy on the oppression and forget the fact that African American women also had to deal with the race and the sexual preference and the ages and stuff like that that also went involved with being black. So white women basically fought for all these rights but neglected black women, which is a really big factor, because if they were trying to get like everybody on board with the women's right movement, you'd think that they would want all the women included in fighting for their equality. So that was really big to me, just because it still shows that even though they're fighting for a common goal, they were still really separated. So black women had to basically fight for not only the rights and being a woman, but also fight for African American rights as well. I wanted to focus on the last part that I thought was really important, which was black theater, and basically just how that started, and people like, I don't know how to say her name, it's like Nodasaki Shang. Just people like her, how they were able to use the arts as a way of describing the oppression that they went through and what they were going through at the time. Black theater was really big back then, and it was, I want to say, like, it had more soul to a lot of the stuff they did. So like poems, then you have, obviously we started getting all black films like Raisin in the Sun, which was a huge film back then. And it just kind of followed along the lines of what it was like being African American at the time. So I thought that was really big, and it just shows like how black theater kind of changed the way it is now, especially now. Sorry about my phone. The way black theater is now, and just how much of an influence it's had on everyday culture that you see now. Being able to have black cast members and black women in different films and books and stuff like that. And then one thing that I'm not going to get into like a mad detail because this is running long, but the Nodasaki Zhang, what she wrote and the title of her pen is a machete. I just thought the title automatically right off the bat was super important, just because back then, like, for somebody of her caliber, for her to be able to write about her oppression and make an impact that way was huge, because not a lot of people back then were able to do what she did, as far as being able to write what she felt and get it across to different races. So I thought that was very important to what's going on. And I feel like that kind of holds a lot of relevance in our society now. People being able to write out the oppressions that they face is just another outlet for them to reach into.